The ledger in front of me blurred into meaningless columns of numbers. Each stroke of my pen sent a dull ache through my wrist, radiating up my forearm. A physical reminder that I'd been bent over this mahogany desk for the past 6 hours, without a break. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of Carter and Associates, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floors of what used to be my father's office. Now it was just mine. Or it would be, if I could navigate the legal minefield he'd left behind. I pressed my fingers against my temples, trying to massage away the tension headache that had become my constant companion these past 3 weeks. The office smelled of old leather and stale coffee, mixed with the faint vanilla scent of the candle burning on the bookshelf. My mother's favorite. The one comfort item I'd allowed myself in this mausoleum of masculine power. Miss Carter, the Reynolds party has arrived for the 4 o'clock meeting. Margaret's voice crackled through the intercom, pulling me from my calculations. My entire body went rigid. Reynolds. The name alone was enough to make my stomach clench with a mixture of dread and something darker. Something I'd spent 6 years trying to bury. Thank you, Margaret. Give me 5 minutes, then show them to the conference room. My voice sounded steadier than I felt, a skill I'd perfected since returning to Chicago 3 weeks ago for my father's funeral. I stood, smoothing down the black pencil skirt that suddenly felt too tight, too restricting. My reflection in the window showed a woman I barely recognized. 24 years old, but carrying herself like someone much older, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, minimal makeup highlighting features that had lost their softness somewhere between New York and here. I'd dressed for armor today, a crisp white blouse, a charcoal blazer with sharp shoulders, and my grandmother's pearls, the only jewelry my father hadn't sold off during one of his business difficulties. The meeting had been on my calendar for a week. When my father's lawyer, Gerald Hampton, had insisted that the Reynolds family needed to be present for the reading of certain codicils to the will, I'd assumed it would be someone from their legal team. Maybe Antonio Reynolds, the family consigliere who'd always handled business negotiations. I should have known better. In this world, the world I'd tried so desperately to escape, nothing was ever simple or delegation-friendly. My hands trembled as I gathered the folders Margaret had prepared. 6 years. It had been 6 years since that night. 6 years since I'd made the biggest mistake of my young life, driven by champagne courage, and the absolute certainty that what I felt was reciprocated. The memory crashed over me like a rogue wave, uninvited and overwhelming. I was 18, wearing a red dress that my father had deemed too mature, but my mother had secretly approved. The Reynolds estate glittered with lights and laughter, celebrating some business milestone I hadn't cared about. I'd only had eyes for one person. Kevin Reynolds stood on the terrace, a glass of whiskey in his hand, looking out over the city like he owned it. At 28, he already carried himself with the authority of someone who'd been groomed for power since birth. Dark hair, sharp jawline, eyes that seemed to see through every pretense and straight into the truth. I'd approached him with the fearlessness of someone who had no idea how cruel reality could be. "Kevin," I'd said, my voice bright with hope and wine. "I need to tell you something." He'd turned to me, and for just a moment, I'd seen something in his eyes. Surprise, maybe even interest. It had been enough to make me bold. "I've been in love with you for 2 years," I'd continued, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "I know I'm young, but I'm not a child anymore. I see the way you look at me sometimes, and I think you feel it too." Then I'd kissed him. Right there, in full view of the terrace's glass doors, where anyone from inside could see. For 3 heartbeats, he'd kissed me back. His hand had come up to cup my face, and I'd felt triumph surge through me. Then he'd pushed me away, hard enough that I'd stumbled backward in my heels. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" His voice had been ice. I thought, "You thought wrong." He looked at me with something worse than anger, contempt. "Go home, Rachel. Go back to your dorm room and your college fantasies. This? He gestured between us. This doesn't exist. But you kissed me back. I was being polite. The cruelty in his tone had been surgical, precise. You're Frank Carter's little girl, nothing more. Whatever you think you felt, whatever you think I felt, forget it. I'm engaged to Victoria Marchetti. The announcement goes out next week. I'd stood there, frozen with humiliation, as he'd walked away. Through the glass doors, I'd seen faces turning toward me. People who'd witnessed my rejection, who'd seen me throw myself at a man who clearly wanted nothing to do with me. Antonio Reynolds had appeared at my elbow moments later, kind but firm. Let me get you a car, Miss Carter. I think it's time you headed home. I'd fled, and I'd kept running for 6 years. The intercom buzzed again. Miss Carter? They're ready in the conference room. I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. I wasn't that naive 18-year-old anymore. I'd gotten my degree in business administration, worked in New York for 3 years building my own career, far from my father's shadow and the world of velvet-wrapped violence he'd navigated. I'd returned to Chicago only because the lawyer's phone call had made it clear. Come home or lose everything. My father's death had been sudden. A heart attack, they said, though the whispers suggested otherwise. And his will had been even more shocking than his death. I walked down the corridor, my heels clicking against the marble floors with a confidence I didn't feel. The conference room door was closed, and through its frosted glass panel, I could see multiple figures inside. Margaret gave me an encouraging nod as I approached. She'd been my father's secretary for 20 years, and one of the few people in this building who looked at me with something other than speculation or judgment. You've got this, she whispered. Your father would be proud. I wasn't sure about that. My father had been a complicated man, loving but distant, protective but controlling. His final message to me, delivered through legal documents and impossible conditions, felt more like punishment than legacy. I pushed open the door. The conference room was designed to intimidate, all dark wood and leather chairs, with oil paintings of stern men, previous Carters, watching from the walls. 5 people sat around the table, and I recognized most of them immediately. Gerald Hampton, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. Antonio Reynolds, his silver hair impeccably styled. 2 younger men I vaguely recognized as Reynolds' associates. And at the head of the table, occupying the chair that should have been mine, sat Kevin Reynolds. Time stopped. He'd changed, of course. 6 years had transformed him from dangerous to deadly. His jaw was harder, his shoulders broader beneath the charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. There were lines at the corners of his eyes now, evidence of either laughter or stress, knowing his world, probably the latter. His dark hair was styled back, revealing the sharp features that had matured into something almost cruel in their perfection. But his eyes, those eyes were exactly as I remembered. Gray, like storm clouds, capable of freezing you in place with a single look. Those eyes were fixed on me now, and I couldn't breathe. Miss Carter, Gerald said, standing quickly. Please, come in. I believe you know everyone here. I forced my legs to move, to carry me to the chair opposite Kevin, as far from him as the table allowed. I set my folders down with deliberate care, refusing to let my hands shake where anyone could see. Mr. Reynolds, I acknowledged, my voice cool and professional. Antonio, gentlemen. Kevin hadn't stood, hadn't moved. He just watched me with that unreadable expression, and I felt 18 again, exposed and foolish. Shall we begin? I directed the question to Gerald, deliberately turning away from Kevin's stare. Of course. Gerald cleared his throat, shuffling papers nervously. As you know, we're here to discuss the specific codicils of your father's will, provisions that affect both the Carter and Reynolds families. I'd read the initial documents. I knew this meeting was necessary. but nothing had prepared me for seeing him again, for the way my body betrayed me with the memory of that kiss, with the echo of humiliation that followed. The Carter business interests, Gerald continued, as you're aware, are extensive. Several legitimate companies, import-export, real estate development, restaurant holdings, as well as certain less conventional operations that provide services to various families. Translation: my father had been a fixer, a middleman who facilitated deals between the Irish, Italian, and Russian factions that carved up Chicago like a pie. He'd been respected because he was neutral, reliable, and smart enough never to choose sides. Upon your father's death, these interests were meant to pass to you, Rachel, as his only child. Gerald's discomfort was obvious now. However, your father included several conditions that must be met for this transfer to occur. Conditions I'm aware of, I said, though my mouth had gone dry. I need to be married within 3 months of his death and remain married for a minimum of 1 year. The absurdity of it would have been funny if it weren't so devastating. My father, even from the grave, was trying to control my life, to force me back into this world I'd escaped. If you fail to meet these conditions, Gerald continued gently, the business interests pass to your cousin, Marcus Carter. Marcus, who'd been embezzling from the family accounts for years. Marcus, who'd been promised leadership by my father's enemies. Marcus, whose assumption of control would destabilize every careful alliance my father had built. I couldn't let that happen, not just for me, but for the dozens of people whose lives depended on the stability of these arrangements. I understand the terms, I said. What I don't understand is why the Reynolds family needs to be present for this discussion. Antonio cleared his throat. Your father and I had an agreement, Miss Carter, a contingency plan, if you will, for exactly this situation. Ice flooded my veins. What kind of agreement? Kevin spoke for the first time, and his voice was exactly as I remembered, deep, controlled, with an edge that suggested violence barely leashed. Your father was concerned about the marriage requirement. He wanted to ensure you had options. The way he said options made my skin prickle. Options, I repeated flatly. The Reynolds family, Antonio said carefully, has agreed to provide you with a suitable husband, someone the other families will respect, someone whose union with you will actually strengthen the stability your father worked so hard to maintain. The room tilted. You're suggesting an arranged marriage. We're offering a solution, Antonio corrected. You need a husband within 3 months. We need... He glanced at Kevin. Certain pressures require that Kevin, as the head of our family, also marry sooner rather than later. The elders believe an unmarried Dawn appears unstable, vulnerable. So we kill 2 birds with 1 stone, Kevin said, his tone suggesting he found the entire situation distasteful. You marry me, I marry you. We satisfy both requirements, maintain the alliances, and in 1 year, we can quietly divorce and go our separate ways. I stared at him, unable to process what I was hearing. This man who'd humiliated me, who'd looked at me with contempt 6 years ago, was proposing marriage. This is insane, I managed. This is practical, Kevin corrected coldly. Your father was a practical man, Rachel. He knew you'd need protection to handle this business. He knew Marcus would try to take what's yours. And he knew the only way to prevent that was to ally the Carter interest with a family strong enough to back your claim. And you agreed to this? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. You agreed to marry the girl you publicly humiliated at your engagement party 6 years ago? Something flickered in his eyes, annoyance maybe, or recognition that I wasn't going to make this easy. That was a long time ago. Not long enough. Listen, Antonio interjected. I know this is unexpected. Unexpected. I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. This is blackmail dressed up as benevolence. My father knew I'd have no choice. You all knew I'd have no choice. You have choices, Kevin said, leaning forward slightly. You can refuse, let Marcus take over, and hope the other families don't tear apart everything your father built. You can try to find another husband in 3 months. Good luck with that, by the way, since most men in this world will see you as damaged goods. The phrase hit like a slap. Or, he continued, his voice dropping into something darker, you can accept the arrangement. We get married in a ceremony that satisfies everyone's requirements. We live under the same roof for appearances. We fulfill our obligations. And in 1 year, we both walk away with what we need. You keep your inheritance. I satisfy the elders. And neither of us has to actually pretend this means anything. The clinical way he described it made something inside me harden. He was right about one thing. I didn't have real choices. Not if I wanted to preserve my father's legacy, protect the people who depended on these business arrangements, and prevent Marcus from destroying everything. But that didn't mean I had to make it easy for him. If I agree to this, I said slowly, I have conditions. Kevin's eyebrow rose. You're not exactly in a position to negotiate. Neither are you, I countered. Your elders want you married, to someone appropriate, someone who can stand beside you publicly without embarrassing the family. How many suitable candidates do you have lined up? How many women are willing to enter a political marriage with a man whose reputation involves exactly the kind of activities that keep normal people awake at night? A dangerous smile curved his lips. Careful, Rachel. You're talking about your future husband. My temporary husband, I corrected. For 1 year. After that, we never have to see each other again. Fine. He leaned back in his chair, the picture of casual control. State your conditions. My mind raced. Separate bedrooms. No public displays of affection beyond what's absolutely necessary for appearances. I maintain control of the Carter businesses. You don't interfere with my decisions unless they directly impact Reynolds' interests. And when the year is up, the divorce is immediate and without contest. Agreed, Kevin said without hesitation. My conditions. You move into the Reynolds estate immediately after the wedding. You attend family functions as required. You don't embarrass me or the family name. You're faithful during the duration of this marriage. I won't have rumors about my wife making me look weak. And you never, ever mentioned that night 6 years ago. As far as everyone knows, this is a strategic alliance between our families. Nothing more. The reference to that night sent heat flooding to my cheeks, but I forced myself to meet his gaze steadily. Agreed. Gerald was already pulling out documents. Excellent. We'll need to move quickly. The 3-month window doesn't leave much time for planning. I suggest a small ceremony, immediate family and key associates only. Whatever's necessary, Kevin said, standing. The meeting was clearly over. Antonio will coordinate the details with you, Rachel. The wedding will take place 4 weeks from today. 4 weeks. I was getting married in 4 weeks to the man I'd spent 6 years trying to forget. He moved toward the door, his associates falling in behind him. But at the threshold, he paused and looked back at me. For just a moment, his expression was unreadable. Not the cold disdain I remembered, but something more complicated. This doesn't have to be a war, Rachel, he said quietly. We can both get through this year without making each other miserable. Can we? I challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, making each other miserable might be the only honest thing about this arrangement. Something that might have been respect flashed across his face. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in the conference room with Gerald, and the weight of an impossible decision that wasn't really a decision at all. I was going to marry Kevin Reynolds. God help us both. The engagement ring arrived by courier 3 days later, a massive emerald-cut diamond flanked by smaller stones, set in platinum. It came with a note in Kevin's angular handwriting. For appearances, don't read into it as if I would. I slipped it onto my finger, watched it catch the afternoon light streaming through my apartment window, and felt nothing but the cold weight of obligation. My small studio in Lincoln Park suddenly felt suffocating. Walls too close, ceiling too low. Everything a reminder that this space, this independence, was temporary. In 4 weeks, I'd be Mrs. Kevin Reynolds, living in the estate where I'd once made a fool of myself. My phone buzzed. Another message from Antonio with wedding details. Guest list approval needed, menu selections, dress consultation scheduled with a designer I'd never heard of, but whose name apparently meant something in their world. I ignored it, turning back to my laptop, where spreadsheets of my father's business interests glowed. The deeper I dug into his affairs, the more complicated the picture became. He'd been more than a middleman. He'd been the spider at the center of a web connecting families who officially hated each other, but quietly needed his neutral ground to negotiate. And Marcus had been systematically poisoning that web for months. My cousin's name appeared in suspicious transactions, leaked information to rivals, deliberate mismanagement of key accounts. My father must have known but had been unable to prove it without causing a family rift. Now Marcus was circling, waiting for me to fail, waiting for the 3-month deadline to pass so he could swoop in and claim everything. The knock at my door made me jump. I wasn't expecting anyone. My few friends in Chicago had faded away during my years in New York, and the people from my father's world, former associates, business partners, had maintained a careful distance since the funeral, as if proximity to me might be contagious. Through the peephole, I saw Antonio Reynolds standing in the hallway, looking uncomfortable in his expensive overcoat. I opened the door. "If you're here to discuss floral arrangements, I already told the coordinator white roses are fine. May I come in?" His tone was gentle, almost paternal, which immediately put me on guard. I stepped aside, gesturing him into my modest space. His eyes swept the studio. The pull-out couch that served as my bed, the small kitchen area, the single window overlooking a brick wall, and I saw him trying to hide his surprise. "I know it's not much," I said defensively, "but it's mine. I paid for it myself. No family money, no strings attached." "I wasn't judging," Antonio assured me, settling into my one decent chair. "In fact, I respect that you built something independent. Your father spoke highly of your work in New York." That caught me off guard. "He did?" "Frank was proud of you, Rachel, even if he didn't know how to show it. He wanted you to have choices he never had." Antonio's expression turned serious. "Which is why I'm here. I need you to understand what you're walking into." I crossed my arms, leaning against the kitchen counter. "I'm not naive, Antonio. I grew up in this world. I know what the Reynolds family does." "Do you?" He studied me carefully. "Kevin isn't your father, Rachel. Frank was a facilitator, a negotiator. Kevin is a ruler. His job isn't to make peace between families. It's to maintain dominance, to ensure the Reynolds name carries enough weight that other families think twice before challenging us." "I know he's dangerous," I said quietly. "Dangerous doesn't begin to cover it." Antonio leaned forward. "Kevin took over the family operations 5 years ago when his father was killed. He was 28 years old, and within 6 months, he'd eliminated every rival who thought youth meant weakness. He restructured the entire organization, brought the Irish families to heel, negotiated treaties with the Russians that his father never could have managed. He's brilliant, ruthless, and completely committed to protecting what's his." "Lucky me," I muttered. Antonio's expression softened. "I'm not telling you this to frighten you. I'm telling you this because you need to understand. Marrying Kevin means more than just legal papers and public appearances. It means becoming part of something larger, something that people will watch, judge, and potentially exploit." "You mean, I'll be a target?" "You already are," he said gently. "The moment your father's will became public knowledge, you became a piece on the board. Marcus isn't the only one interested in the Carter operations. There are families who would love to see Kevin weakened, who would use you to accomplish that if given the opportunity. I thought about the past 3 weeks, the feeling of being watched when I walked to my car, the hang-up calls on my cell phone, the subtle inquiries from people I barely knew about my plans. "Has someone been following me?" I asked. Antonio had the grace to look slightly guilty. "Kevin assigned security the day we met with you. Discreet, but present. He takes protection seriously, especially for family members." "I'm not family yet. You became family the moment you agreed to marry him." Antonio stood, moving to the window. "Rachel, I've known Kevin since he was born. I watched him grow up in this world, saw him learn to navigate its cruelties. That night 6 years ago, the engagement party. I don't want to talk about that," I cut in sharply. "You need to understand context," Antonio continued, ignoring my protest. Victoria Marchetti was a political arrangement. Their families had negotiated that engagement before Kevin was old enough to have a say. He cared about her the way you'd care about a business partner, respectful, cordial, but no real emotion. "So the kiss meant nothing," I said bitterly. "I didn't say that." Antonio turned to face me. "I said he didn't love Victoria. What I saw that night, the way he kissed you back before he shut it down, that was real. But Kevin couldn't afford real. Not then. An unmarried Don showing genuine affection to someone outside approved channels? That would have been seen as a vulnerability, a weakness other families could exploit." My chest tightened. "So he humiliated me to protect himself." "He humiliated you to protect you," Antonio corrected quietly. "If other families had thought you mattered to him, you would have become a target. Your father would have been pressured to use you as leverage. Kevin did what he had to do. He made sure no one thought you were important." The explanation should have made me feel better. Instead, it made everything worse. Knowing the rejection had been calculated, knowing he'd been capable of that level of cruelty, even for strategic reasons. "What happened to Victoria?" I heard myself ask. Antonio's expression darkened. "She died 2 years ago. Car accident on Lakeshore Drive. Kevin was in Milan when it happened, negotiating with the Cosa Nostra families. By the time he got back, she was already buried." "And no one ever questioned the timing," I said slowly. "People questioned," Antonio admitted. "But nothing was ever proven. Victoria had been drinking that night. There were witnesses at the restaurant who saw her stumbling as she left. The crash was ruled an accident, tragic, but not suspicious." I studied his face. "But you don't believe that?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I believe Victoria Marchetti knew things she shouldn't have known. I believe she was having an affair with someone from a rival family, and I believe Kevin found out 2 days before she died. The implication hung heavy in the air between us." "Did he?" "Kevin was in Milan," Antonio repeated firmly. "Completely alibied. But people close to Victoria, people who might have encouraged her betrayal. They had a series of unfortunate accidents in the months that followed. Heart attacks, car crashes, one particularly tragic suicide." I moved to the couch, suddenly needing to sit. This was the world I was marrying into, where justice was delivered in the dark, where loyalty was the only currency that mattered, where even the appearance of betrayal could be fatal. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I want you to understand who Kevin is." Antonio's voice was measured. "He's not a good man, Rachel. He's done things that would make most people lose sleep. But he has a code. He protects what's his with everything he has. He values loyalty above all else. And once you're his wife, once you're truly part of this family, he will burn the world down before letting anyone hurt you." "That's not comfort," I whispered. "It's not meant to be. It's meant to be truth." He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Kevin knows you've been investigating Marcus. My head snapped up. How? He has people everywhere, Rachel. In Marcus's organization, in your father's old network. Probably in the cafe downstairs from this apartment. You can't make a move in this city without Kevin being aware of it. The violation of privacy should have enraged me. Instead, I felt a strange sort of resignation. Of course Kevin was watching. In his world, information was power, and ignorance was death. Tell him, I said carefully, that if he wants to know what I'm doing, he can ask me directly instead of spying. Antonio's lips twitched. I'll pass that along, though I suspect he'll find your attitude more amusing than threatening. After he left, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment, the engagement ring heavy on my finger. I pulled out my phone and, before I could second-guess myself, typed a message to the number Antonio had given me for emergencies. If you're going to have me followed, the least you could do is hire more subtle people. The guy in the blue sedan has been parked outside my building for 3 days. Even the homeless man on the corner has noticed. The response came almost immediately. He's not one of mine. My blood ran cold. Then who? Stay inside. Lock the door. Someone's coming. I was already moving, throwing the deadbolt, checking the window locks. My hands shook as I pulled my father's revolver from the bedside drawer. The one item of his I'd kept. The one thing that made me feel slightly less vulnerable. My phone rang. Kevin's voice was sharp, controlled. Are you alone? Yes. Good. There are 3 men in a black SUV 2 blocks from your building. They've been circling for the past hour, waiting for the surveillance rotation change. Antonio is 5 minutes away with a team. How long have you known? My voice came out steadier than I felt. 30 minutes. I was trying to identify them before sending people in. But they're moving faster than expected. I heard something in the background. Car engines. Urgent voices. Rachel, listen to me very carefully. If anyone knocks on your door before Antonio arrives, don't answer. If they try to force entry, there's a fire escape outside your kitchen window. Go down, not up, and head toward the main street. Stay visible. Stay in crowds. You think they're going to? I think Marcus is testing how protected you are. I think he wants to know if I care enough to respond to a threat against you. Kevin's voice hardened. And he's about to find out exactly how much I care about what's mine. What's mine? The words shouldn't have sent heat through me, but they did. I heard it then. Footsteps in the hallway outside my door. Heavy, deliberate, nothing like my elderly neighbor's shuffling gait. Someone's out there, I whispered. Do not open that door, Kevin commanded. Antonio is 2 minutes away. The doorknob rattled. Then came a sharper sound. Something metal scraping against the lock. They were picking it. I moved to the window, the phone still pressed to my ear, the revolver heavy in my other hand. Through the glass, I could see the fire escape Kevin mentioned, rusty but solid. They're breaking in, I said. Kevin's response was ice. Then it's time they learned what happens when someone touches what belongs to me. Get to the fire escape. Now. I was already climbing out the window when I heard my door crash open behind me. Male voices speaking in low tones. The metallic clang of my feet on the fire escape must have alerted them because seconds later, a face appeared at my kitchen window. I didn't think. I just aimed the revolver and fired. The glass shattered. The man jerked back with a curse, and I was running down the fire escape, my dress shoes slipping on wet metal, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. I hit the alley and ran toward the streetlight, toward people, toward safety. Behind me, I heard shouting, more crashes. Then I heard the distinctive sound of multiple cars screeching to a halt. Antonio appeared at the alley entrance, flanked by 4 men I didn't recognize. Their weapons were visible. No pretense, no subtlety. This was a message. Miss Carter, Antonio's voice was remarkably calm given the chaos. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, unable to speak. One of the men disappeared into the building. The others took positions, blocking the alley. Antonio guided me toward a sleek black town car where Kevin stood by the open door, his expression absolutely cold. He looked at me, his gaze traveling from my tangled hair to my torn stockings to the revolver still clutched in my shaking hand. Then he took off his jacket and draped it around my shoulders. "Get in the car," he said quietly. "My apartment is a crime scene now. You can't stay there." He cupped my face with surprising gentleness, tilting my chin up so I had to meet his eyes. "Did they touch you?" "No, I got out before." "Good." His thumb stroked my cheek once, a gesture that felt more intimate than it should. Then his expression hardened again. "You're coming home with me. Tonight. No arguments. But, Rachel," his voice dropped to something dangerous. "Someone just tried to abduct you from your own home. Whoever they were, whoever sent them, this is no longer theoretical danger. You need real protection, and I need you where I can see you. So you're coming home with me now, and you're going to stay there until I find out who's responsible for this." "This wasn't part of the deal," I protested weakly. "The deal changed the second they came after you." Kevin's gray eyes were storm dark in the streetlight. "You're mine now, Rachel, and I protect what's mine." Before I could argue, he was guiding me into the back seat. Antonio slid in beside me while Kevin took the front passenger seat, his phone already pressed to his ear, firing off rapid instructions in Italian. As we pulled away from my apartment building, I saw men in suits entering through the front, more men disappearing into the alley. Kevin's response to the threat wasn't subtle, it was overwhelming. My hands finally stopped shaking somewhere around Michigan Avenue. I peeled my fingers off the revolver, letting Antonio take it carefully. "You did well," he said quietly. "Most people freeze when attacked. You acted. I shot out my own window. You defended yourself. Kevin will be pleased." I glanced at the front seat where Kevin was still speaking rapid-fire Italian, his voice clipped and cold. "He doesn't sound pleased." "He's furious," Antonio corrected. "But not at you. At whoever thought they could touch his fiancée without consequences." The word echoed strangely. Fiancé. In 4 weeks I'd be his wife. But tonight, for the first time, I understood what that really meant in his world. It meant I was no longer just Rachel Carter, trying to navigate her father's legacy. I was Kevin Reynolds' future wife. And that made me either the most protected woman in Chicago, or the biggest target. The Reynolds estate looked different at night, less like the elegant backdrop of my humiliation, and more like a fortress. Security gates, surveillance cameras, guards stationed at intervals along the drive. Kevin hadn't been exaggerating about protection. We pulled up to the main house, and I finally allowed myself to process what had just happened. Someone had tried to abduct me. From my own apartment. The space I'd thought was safe, independent, mine. That illusion was thoroughly shattered now. Kevin opened my door before Antonio could, his hand extended. I took it automatically, letting him help me out. His palm was warm against mine, calloused in a way that reminded me he wasn't just a man who gave orders, he carried them out too. "Maria will show you to a guest room," he said, his voice still tight with controlled anger. "Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning." "I want to know who..." "Tomorrow." It wasn't a suggestion. Right now, you need to process what happened. Trust me, Rachel. Shock doesn't hit immediately. Give it an hour, and you'll start shaking again. He was right, I realized. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion that made my legs feel unstable. Maria turned out to be a woman in her 60s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She guided me through the massive house, past rooms I vaguely remembered from that disastrous party, up a sweeping staircase to the second floor. "Mr. Reynolds prepared this room himself," Maria said, opening a door to reveal a space that was nothing like I expected. It wasn't ostentatious or intimidating. Instead, it was comfortable. Soft grays and creams, a four-poster bed with what looked like actually cozy bedding, a window seat overlooking the gardens. "There are clothes in the closet," Maria continued. "Mr. Reynolds had your sizes from the engagement ring fitting. The bathroom is through there. If you need anything at all, use the phone on the nightstand. Extension 7 reaches the kitchen. Extension 9 reaches Mr. Reynolds directly." She left me alone, and I finally let myself collapse onto the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking again, just like Kevin had predicted. The revolver shot replayed in my mind, the man's face at the window, the way the glass had exploded, how easily I could have missed. I should call someone, but who? I had no close friends left in Chicago. My mother's family had disowned her when she married my father. The few colleagues from New York who might care wouldn't understand this world. I was completely alone, except for the man who'd rejected me 6 years ago and was now my only protection. A soft knock interrupted my spiral. "Come in," I called, expecting Maria. Instead, Kevin entered, carrying a tray with tea and what looked like whiskey. He'd changed from his suit into dark jeans and a Henley that made him look younger, more approachable, though the cold calculation in his eyes remained. "You should eat something," he said, setting the tray on the bedside table. "But I'm guessing you're not hungry, so I brought alternatives. Alcohol and caffeine, quite the combination. Tea for comfort, whiskey for honesty." He poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal glass and handed it to me. "Drink. It'll help with the shaking." I took it, our fingers brushing. The contact sent an unwelcome jolt through me, muscle memory from 6 years ago, when his touch had meant everything. Kevin poured his own glass and settled into the armchair near the window, studying me with those unreadable gray eyes. "You want to know who was behind it?" "Of course I do." "The men we caught were hired muscle, professional but not particularly skilled, which tells me whoever sent them wasn't expecting real resistance. They thought you were an easy target." "But you know who hired them," I pressed. "I have a strong suspicion." Kevin swirled his whiskey. "Your cousin Marcus met with representatives from the Castellano family 3 days ago. The Castellanos have been trying to move into territory your father controlled for years. With you out of the picture, Marcus inherits, and he's already signaled his willingness to make deals with them. So they tried to kidnap me to speed up the timeline. The whiskey burned going down, but he was right. It helped." "What happens to them?" Something dark crossed Kevin's face. "You don't want to know." "Yes, I do." I leaned forward. "If I'm going to be part of this world, if I'm going to marry you and live here and pretend we're a united front, then I need to understand how it works. What happens to people who come after me?" Kevin was quiet for a long moment, weighing whether to give me the truth or a comfortable lie. Finally, he said, "They disappear." "Not immediately. First, they tell us everything they know. Who hired them, what the plan was, who else is involved. Then they're dealt with in a way that sends a message to anyone else who might consider you a target." "Dealt with," I repeated. "You mean killed?" "I mean removed as a threat permanently." His voice held no apology, no regret. "In my world, Rachel, mercy is seen as weakness. If I let them live, it suggests you're not valuable enough to warrant real consequences. It invites future attacks." My stomach churned. This was the reality I'd signed up for, a world where violence was currency and lives were traded for strategic advantage. "And Marcus?" I asked. "Is untouchable for now." Kevin's jaw tightened. He's family. Your family. Moving against him directly would start a war I'm not ready to fight yet. But he's being watched. Every move, every meeting, every transaction. When he makes a mistake, and he will, I'll have the justification I need. To kill him. To remove him as a threat to you. Kevin set down his glass and moved closer, crouching so we were eye level. Rachel, I need you to understand something. The moment you agreed to marry me, you became mine to protect. That's not romance. It's not sentiment. It's fact. An attack on you is an attack on me, on my authority, on my ability to protect what belongs to me. I can't let that stand. So this is about your reputation. This is about keeping you alive. His voice was fierce now. You think I spent 2 years building alliances, negotiating treaties, eliminating rivals just to have it all unravel because some ambitious cousin and a rival family thought my future wife was an acceptable casualty? That's not going to happen. I studied his face, searching for any hint of the young man who'd kissed me back 6 years ago. But that person, if he'd ever really existed, was buried deep beneath layers of authority and calculated violence. The memory surfaced unbidden, and this time, I let it come. It was 3 weeks after the engagement party. I'd returned to Northwestern, thrown myself into my studies, tried to pretend that night never happened. But my father had insisted I attend a business dinner at the Reynolds estate, some negotiation about territory disputes that required neutral ground. I'd been seated in the library, trying to be invisible, when Kevin had walked in. He'd looked surprised to see me. Then that cold mask had descended. Your father's in the dining room, he'd said shortly. I know. I'm hiding. From what? From you, from everyone who saw me make a fool of myself 3 weeks ago. He'd been quiet for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, you didn't make a fool of yourself. Really, because it felt pretty foolish being rejected in front of half of Chicago's criminal elite. You were brave. His voice had been softer than I'd ever heard it. Reckless and young and completely inappropriate, but brave. Most people in this world never say what they actually feel. Because feelings are weaknesses, I'd recited bitterly. Because feelings are dangerous. He'd moved closer, and for a moment, I'd thought. But then Victoria had called from the hallway, and Kevin had transformed back into the cold stranger. Go back to school, Rachel. Forget about this world. Forget about me. Build something better. I'd tried. God, I'd tried. Where did you go? Kevin's voice pulled me back to the present. The library. 6 years ago. You told me to build something better. He looked away, and I saw his jaw tighten. I meant it. And yet, here we are. I took another sip of whiskey. Tell me something, Kevin. When you agreed to this marriage arrangement, when Antonio brought you my father's proposition, did you hesitate at all? Did you think about that night, about what you said to me? Every second of every day since. The admission was so quiet I almost missed it. You think I don't remember? You think I don't know exactly how cruel I was? Then why? Because letting you believe I cared would have been crueler. He stood, pacing to the window. You were 18, Rachel. 18, naive, full of ideas about love and romance and the future. If I'd encouraged that, if I'd let you think there was something between us, you would have waited for me. You would have wasted years hoping for a man who could never give you what you deserved. So you decided what I deserved. Yes. He turned to face me, and there was something raw in his expression now. I decided you deserved more than becoming a mob wife at 18. I decided you deserved a chance to live in the real world, to build a career, to find someone who could love you without constantly calculating how to keep you safe from enemies. I decided you deserved better than me. The honesty in his voice made my chest ache. And now it's too late. His smile was bitter, Now we're both trapped by circumstances neither of us wanted. You need a husband to keep your inheritance. I need a wife to satisfy the elders. So we make the best of an impossible situation. For 1 year, he agreed. After that, you're free. I'll make sure the divorce is quiet, that you get to keep everything you need. You can go back to New York, rebuild your life somewhere I can't touch it. It should have been a comfort, knowing this was temporary, knowing I had an exit date. But instead, it felt like loss. What about you? I asked. What happens after the year? I find another wife, one the elders approve, one who understands this world. He moved back to his chair, suddenly looking exhausted. Someone who won't look at me like I'm a monster every time I make a decision that keeps us both alive. I don't think you're a monster, I said quietly. You should. He met my eyes. Because that's what this world requires, Rachel. Monsters or victims. And I decided a long time ago which one I'd be. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. Finally, Kevin stood. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we'll go over security protocols. Where you can go, who you can trust, what to do if something happens. And we need to accelerate the wedding timeline. The longer you're just my fiancé, the more vulnerable you are. Once we're married, attacking you means declaring war on the entire Reynolds family. He was at the door when I found my voice. Kevin? He paused, looking back. Thank you. For tonight. For the protection. For... I gestured helplessly. All of it. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. You're mine to protect now, Rachel. That's not something I take lightly. He hesitated, then added, and for what it's worth, I'm sorry. For 6 years ago. For all of this. You deserved a better hand than the one life dealt you. So did you, I said softly. He smiled, but it was sad. Maybe. But at least now we can be miserable together. After he left, I changed into the silk pajamas I found in the dresser, exactly my size, exactly my style, further evidence of how thoroughly Kevin's people had investigated me, and climbed into bed. The sheets smelled like cedar, and something else, something that reminded me of the cologne Kevin had worn that night 6 years ago. I wondered if he'd deliberately chosen this room, if he'd stood here imagining me in his space, under his protection, or if I was reading too much into practical arrangements. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You made a powerful enemy tonight. Sleep well in your gilded cage. Marcus. It had to be. I should tell Kevin. Should show him the message. Let him handle it. But something stubborn inside me resisted. Marcus was my problem. My family. My responsibility. Kevin had already done enough. Taken on enough risk. I'd spent 6 years building something independent. I wasn't ready to hand over everything. Not my safety, not my agency, not my ability to fight my own battles. Even if those battles were now playing out in a world I'd never fully belonged to. I turned off the light and lay in the darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the Reynolds estate. Somewhere in this massive house, Kevin was making calls, mobilizing resources, ensuring that what happened to me tonight never happened again. And in 4 weeks, no, less now, Antonio had said something about accelerating. I'd be his wife. Not in the way I'd dreamed at 18. Not with love or romance or any of the things that made marriage meaningful, but bound together nonetheless. 2 people trapped by circumstances, by duty, by the ghost of what might have been if we'd been anyone else. I pulled the engagement ring off my finger, studying it in the moonlight. The diamond caught the light, scattering it across the ceiling like stars. For appearances, Kevin's note had said. But appearances, I was learning, could become reality in this world. Fake marriages had real consequences. Strategic alliances created genuine bonds, and pretending not to care about someone was sometimes the only way to keep them safe. 6 years ago, I'd been naive enough to believe love could conquer everything. Now, I knew better. But somewhere deep inside, a traitorous part of me wondered, what if Kevin's cold rejection had been its own form of protection? What if pushing me away had been the only way he knew how to keep me safe? And what if, despite everything, despite the pain and humiliation and wasted years, what if some part of him had meant that kiss after all? The wedding was moved up to 2 weeks, not because of romance or urgency, but because Kevin's intelligence network had uncovered 3 separate plots against me, all scheduled to occur before the original date. They're trying to eliminate you before the marriage makes you untouchable, Antonio explained over breakfast on my 3rd day at the estate. Once you're Kevin's wife, attacking you means war, but while you're just his fiancée, I'm fair game, I finished. Kevin walked in then, already dressed for the day in another immaculate suit. He looked tired. I'd heard him on the phone until past midnight, coordinating responses to the threats. "You're wearing the tracker," he said, his eyes going to the delicate bracelet on my wrist. It looked like jewelry, rose gold with tiny diamonds, but I knew it contained a GPS chip. Kevin had insisted I wear it at all times, even to bed. Yes, I'd stopped fighting these small battles. Though I'm not planning to leave the estate. Plans change, threats evolve. He poured coffee, his movements efficient. We need to discuss the wedding ceremony. I thought Antonio was handling that. He's handling logistics, but there are decisions only you can make. Kevin sat across from me, and I noticed the shadows under his eyes. "Do you want your mother's family there?" The question surprised me. I didn't think I had a choice. You don't have to invite anyone who'll make you uncomfortable. This marriage might be strategic, but it's still your wedding. I thought about my mother's relatives, aunts and uncles who'd cut off all contact when she married my father, who'd refused to attend her funeral, who'd made it clear they wanted nothing to do with the Carter name. No, I decided. Just people from our world, people who understand what this is. Kevin nodded, looking almost relieved. Good, less complications. He slid a folder across the table. These are the vows. Standard, religious enough to satisfy tradition, but not so specific that either of us has to lie. I read through them. Formal, impersonal, exactly what you'd expect from a strategic alliance. No love and cherish. Do you want to promise to love me? His voice was challenging. Do you want to promise to cherish me? Something flickered in his eyes. I promise to protect you, Rachel. That's more valuable than cherish in this world. He was right, of course, but it still stung. There's something else, Kevin continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone. The wedding night. We need to discuss expectations. Heat flooded my face. I thought separate bedrooms was agreed upon. It is, but appearances matter, and people will be watching for signs that this marriage is legitimate. Which means on our wedding night, you'll need to stay in my room, the master bedroom. We can move your things to the adjoining suite the next day, but that first night. We need to look like a real couple, I finished. Yes. I took a breath. Do you expect? I expect nothing. Kevin's voice was firm. My bedroom has a sitting area with a couch. One of us can sleep there. Or there's a guest room connected through the bathroom that no one knows about. We have options that maintain appearances without compromising the agreement. The relief I felt was complicated by something else. Disappointment? No. That was ridiculous. Fine, I managed. Kevin studied me for a moment, and I had the uncomfortable feeling he could see every thought I was trying to hide. There's a dress fitting this afternoon. Maria will go with you. Take 2 of the security team. It's a bridal shop in the middle of downtown. How dangerous can it be? Extremely, if the right people know you'll be there. He stood, already moving toward the door. Humor me, Rachel. 2 more weeks, and then you'll have the full protection of my name. Until then, you're vulnerable, and I'd prefer you stay alive long enough to actually marry me. How romantic, I muttered. He paused at the door, looking back with that unreadable expression. Romance is a luxury people like us can't afford. Security is what keeps you breathing. I know which one I prefer. After he left, Antonio cleared his throat. He's not usually this intense. Could have fooled me. No, truly, Kevin is always controlled, always calculating. But since the attack on your apartment, he's been... Antonio searched for the word. Agitated. He's called in resources from 3 states to investigate the threat. He's moved schedules around to ensure he's available if you need him. He even canceled a meeting with the Russian families, something he's never done, because it conflicted with your dress fitting. I stared at him. He's coming to the fitting? He insisted, said he wasn't letting you out of his sight until the wedding. Antonio's expression was knowing. For a strategic alliance, he's being remarkably protective. The bridal boutique was in the Gold Coast, a tiny shop that catered to the sort of women who didn't look at price tags. Maria had made the appointment, had communicated my sizes and preferences, though how she knew those I wasn't sure. Kevin's SUV pulled up directly in front, and his security team did a sweep before allowing me inside. He walked in behind me, looking completely out of place among the silk and lace. Mr. Reynolds, the boutique owner gushed. Such an honor. We have several pieces we thought might suit Miss Carter's coloring and frame. I'll be in the waiting area, Kevin said to me. Take your time. The next hour was surreal. Trying on dress after dress while Maria and the boutique staff offered opinions. Traditional ball gowns, sleek modern designs, vintage-inspired pieces with intricate beading. I found myself drawn to a simpler design. Ivory silk with delicate lace sleeves, fitted through the bodice before flowing into a modest train. It was elegant without being ostentatious, beautiful without screaming, "Look at me." That one, Maria said approvingly. It suits you. I studied myself in the 3-way mirror. The woman looking back was a stranger, sophisticated, composed, ready to be a mob boss's wife. May I? Kevin's voice startled me. He'd appeared in the doorway of the fitting room area, and the staff had scattered, giving us privacy. You're not supposed to see the dress before the wedding, I said automatically. We're breaking most of the other rules. What's one more? He moved closer, his eyes traveling over the dress with an intensity that made my skin heat. It's perfect. Really? You look. He trailed off, something raw crossing his face. You look like you belong in my world, which is dangerous for both of us. Why dangerous? He reached out, adjusting a piece of lace that had fallen across my shoulder. His fingers brushed my collarbone, and I shivered. Because it makes me forget this is temporary, he said quietly. It makes me imagine a future where this isn't just strategy. My heart hammered. Kevin. But it is strategy, he continued, his voice hardening. And I can't forget that. Neither can you. This dress, this wedding, this marriage, it's all a means to an end. Don't confuse appearances with reality. The words were harsh, but I saw something else in his eyes. A warning, maybe, or a plea. Don't get attached. Don't make the same mistake you made 6 years ago. I understand, I said, though my chest ached. Good. He stepped back, the professional mask sliding into place. Buy the dress. Whatever else you need, shoes, jewelry, whatever Maria suggests. Spare no expense. You're marrying a Reynolds. People will expect perfection. He left, and I stood alone in the beautiful dress, feeling more trapped than ever. That night, I couldn't sleep. The estate was too quiet, too still. I found myself wandering the halls, drawn by some inexplicable pull toward Kevin's study, the room where I'd overheard my father and his father negotiating territory agreements when I was young. The door was ajar, light spilling into the hallway. I heard Kevin's voice, low and intense. "I don't care what it costs. Find everyone who knew about Rachel's apartment address. Find everyone who had access to that information. And find out how the Castellanos knew our security rotation schedule." A pause. Then, "No. Don't wait for the wedding. I want them handled now. Tonight. Anyone who compromised her security is a liability we can't afford." I should have walked away, should have gone back to my room and pretended I hadn't heard, but something kept me frozen in place. "Victoria was a mistake," Kevin said, and my breath caught. I should have known she was playing both sides. But I was young. I thought I could control the situation. I won't make that mistake with Rachel. Another pause. Longer this time. "I know she's different," Kevin said, his voice dropping. "That's what terrifies me. With Victoria, it was always business. But Rachel..." He made a frustrated sound. "Rachel looks at me like I'm still human. Like there's something in me worth saving. And I can't let her get close enough to realize there's nothing there. Nothing worth her faith." My vision blurred with tears I didn't understand. "The marriage is necessary," Kevin continued. "For her protection, for the alliances, for stability. But after the year is up, she needs to walk away. She needs to forget about this world, about me, about all of it. Promise me if something happens, if this goes wrong, you'll get her out. Get her somewhere safe where none of this can touch her." I heard Antonio's muffled response, then Kevin's harsh laugh. "Love her? I can't afford to love her. The moment I do, she becomes the weapon everyone uses against me. No, better she thinks I'm cold, that this is just business. Better she hates me than stays here and gets destroyed by my world." I pressed my hand against my mouth, stifling the sound trying to escape. "I know," Kevin said softly. "I know I'm lying to myself, but it's the only way I know how to keep her safe. From everyone else. From myself." I fled then, back to my room, my heart hammering. I climbed into bed and pulled the covers over my head like a child hiding from monsters. But the monsters were already here. They wore expensive suits and carried guns, and spoke in code about territories and alliances. And the most dangerous monster of all had gray eyes and a voice that could sound almost tender when he thought no one was listening. Kevin Reynolds was protecting me from everyone, including himself. And I was starting to understand that maybe, just maybe, the cruelest thing he'd done 6 years ago wasn't rejecting me. It was making me believe he didn't care when every action since suggested otherwise. 2 weeks until the wedding. 2 weeks until I became Mrs. Kevin Reynolds. And God help me, I was no longer sure if I was being forced into this marriage, or if some part of me had been waiting for this moment since the night he'd pushed me away. The day before the wedding, Kevin's organization moved with precision that would have impressed a military operation. Additional security swept the church. Background checks were run on every vendor, and alternate routes to and from the ceremony were mapped. I spent most of the day in final fittings and preparations, surrounded by Maria and a team of stylists who seemed determined to transform me into the perfect mob wife. Hair, makeup, nails, everything was scrutinized and perfected. But my mind was elsewhere, replaying Kevin's words from the study. I can't afford to love her. The problem was, I wasn't sure how I felt anymore. Hate was easy. It had fueled me for 6 years, given me purpose, kept me moving forward. But now, living in his house, seeing the care he took to protect me, understanding the weight of the responsibility he carried, hate had become something more complicated. "You're thinking too much," Maria observed as she adjusted my robe. Tomorrow is your wedding day. You should be excited. It's not that kind of wedding. Isn't it? She smiled knowingly. I've worked for the Reynolds family for 30 years. I watched Kevin grow up, saw him become the man he is today. And I've never seen him like this. Constantly checking security feeds, personally reviewing every detail, insisting on being involved in decisions he'd normally delegate. He's just being thorough. He's being protective. There's a difference. Maria's expression softened. That boy has carried the weight of this family since he was 28 years old. He's made hard choices, sacrificed his own happiness for duty and responsibility. But when he looks at you... A sharp knock interrupted her. Kevin's voice came through the door. Rachel, I need you in my study. Now. The urgency in his tone sent alarm racing through me. I threw on proper clothes and hurried downstairs, Maria following. Kevin's study was crowded. Antonio, 2 men I recognized as high-ranking members of his organization, and a laptop open on the desk, showing what looked like surveillance footage. What's wrong? I asked. Kevin's expression was granite. Marcus made his move. He turned the laptop toward me. The footage showed my cousin meeting with 3 men in suits, faces I didn't recognize but whose expensive clothes and careful demeanor screamed organized crime. The Castellanos, Antonio confirmed, and representatives from 2 other families who've been testing our boundaries. They're planning something for tomorrow. My stomach dropped. The wedding. Not an attack, Kevin said quickly. They're smarter than that. Too public, too many witnesses. But they're planning to use the ceremony to humiliate you, to undermine the alliance before it's even established. How? Kevin's jaw tightened. They have documents, fabricated evidence that you've been embezzling from your father's businesses, financial records showing transfers to offshore accounts, emails with you supposedly coordinating with Marcus to sell off company assets. It's all fake, but convincing enough to raise questions. They're going to present this evidence at the wedding, Antonio continued. In front of every family in Chicago. They'll demand a formal investigation, suggest that Kevin is covering for his new wife's criminal activity. It'll make both of you look weak. I sank into a chair, my mind reeling. Marcus helped them create this. He provided the access they needed to your father's files, the templates for the forgeries. Kevin's voice was cold fury. He's been working with them for months. What do? We have 2 options. Kevin leaned against his desk, arms crossed. Cancel the wedding. Delay until we can publicly disprove the evidence. That gives us time, but makes us look like we're running from the accusations. Or, I prompted, or we get married as planned. And during the reception, we present our own evidence. Proof that Marcus has been the one stealing from the family. Documentation of his meetings with the Castellanos. Evidence of his conspiracy to undermine the Carter-Reynolds alliance. Antonio nodded. We've been building the case for weeks. Financial forensics, surveillance footage, testimony from people Marcus thought were loyal to him. It's airtight. But it means exposing him publicly, I said slowly. At my wedding, in front of everyone. It means defending yourself, Kevin corrected. It means showing every family in Chicago that you're not someone to be underestimated, that attacking you has consequences. I looked at the surveillance footage again. Marcus shaking hands with men who wanted me destroyed, who'd tried to have me abducted. My own cousin, willing to sell me out for power and money. Do it, I said. Present the evidence. Show everyone exactly what Marcus is. Kevin studied me for a long moment. You understand what this means? Once we expose him, he's finished. Not just his reputation. His life will be in danger. The families don't forgive betrayal. He tried to have me kidnapped. He fabricated evidence to destroy me at my own wedding. He doesn't deserve my protection. Something like respect crossed Kevin's face. then tomorrow won't just be our wedding. It'll be a declaration of war. The rest of the day was spent in final preparations, not just for the wedding, but for the confrontation to come. Kevin's legal team assembled documentation. His technical people prepared presentations. His security coordinated responses to potential fallout. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt something like certainty settling into my bones. This was who I needed to be in this world. Not the naive girl who believed in romance, but a woman willing to defend herself with every weapon available. That evening, Kevin found me on the terrace, looking out over the grounds. The wedding would be tomorrow afternoon, followed by a reception here at the estate. By this time tomorrow, I'd be Mrs. Kevin Reynolds. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, coming to stand beside me. "About which part? The marriage or the public exposure of my cousin's betrayal?" "Either. Both." I turned to face him. In the fading sunlight, he looked younger somehow, less burdened. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends on the question. Why did you really agree to this marriage? Not the public reason about satisfying the elders. The real reason." Kevin was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Because 6 years ago, I made a choice I regretted every day since. I pushed you away to protect you, and I watched you build a life far from this world. A good life, safe life. And then your father died, and suddenly you were right back in the middle of everything I'd tried to save you from. So this is guilt. This is me refusing to fail you twice." His voice was fierce. "I couldn't protect you then. I was too young, too new to my position, too vulnerable to the politics. But I can protect you now. As my wife, you're untouchable. As my partner, you'll have resources and authority that will keep Marcus and the Castellanos and everyone else from destroying what your father built. And after the year," I asked quietly, "when we divorce and I walk away, what then? Then you'll be safe, established, protected by the alliance even if we're no longer married. You'll have the Carter businesses, the respect of the families, and freedom to live however you choose. You've thought this through. I've thought of nothing else since Antonio brought me the proposition." Kevin's hand came up, cupping my face with unexpected gentleness. "I know you don't trust me. I know you probably hate me for what I did 6 years ago. But I need you to believe this. Keeping you safe is the only thing that matters. Everything else, my reputation, my authority, even my life, is secondary to making sure you survive this world." My breath caught. "Kevin." "Don't," he interrupted softly. "Don't say anything you'll regret. Tomorrow we become allies, partners, maybe eventually friends if we're lucky. But that's all this can be, Rachel. Anything else is too dangerous." He dropped his hand and stepped back, the professional mask sliding into place. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's a big day. Maria will wake you at 7 for final preparations." I watched him walk away, his shoulders straight, his gait controlled. Everything about Kevin Reynolds was controlled. His voice, his expressions, his emotions. Everything except the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. That night, I lay awake replaying every interaction we'd had since that meeting in the conference room. The way he'd materialized when I was in danger, the security he'd arranged, the care he'd taken with every detail of the wedding, the fury in his voice when he spoke about threats against me. I can't afford to love her. But what if he already did? What if this marriage, this strategic, necessary, completely logical arrangement, was his way of keeping me close while maintaining enough distance to claim it meant nothing? What if Kevin Reynolds had been protecting me from himself for 6 years, and this marriage was him finally admitting he couldn't stay away anymore? I fell asleep with that question unanswered, and woke to Maria gently shaking my shoulder. "It's time, Miss Carter. Your wedding day has arrived." The morning passed in a blur of activity. Hair styled in an intricate updo, makeup applied with artistic precision, the ivory dress carefully fastened. When I finally looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back was elegant, confident, ready to stand beside one of Chicago's most dangerous men and claim her place in his world. "You look beautiful," Maria said, her eyes suspiciously bright. "Mr. Kevin is going to lose his mind." "This is a business arrangement," I reminded her. "Of course it is." Her smile suggested she didn't believe that any more than I did. The ceremony was small, as promised. Maybe 50 people, all carefully vetted members of various families. The church was beautiful, decorated with white roses and ivy, sunlight streaming through stained glass. I walked down the aisle alone, no father to give me away, no family to support me. Just me, choosing this path, accepting this future. And at the altar, Kevin waited. He looked devastating in a black tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled, his gray eyes fixed on me with an intensity that stole my breath. As I got closer, I saw his hands were clenched at his sides, his jaw tight. He looked like a man barely maintaining control. I reached him, and he extended his hand. I took it, and his fingers closed around mine, warm, steady, slightly trembling. The priest began the ceremony, speaking about partnership and commitment, and building a future together. Words that should have felt hollow given our arrangement, but somehow didn't. When it came time for vows, Kevin's voice was clear and steady. "I, Kevin Dominic Reynolds, take you, Rachel Ann Carter, to be my wife. I promise to protect you, to stand beside you, to honor the trust you place in me this day." My turn. I'd memorized the words, practiced them until they felt natural. But looking into Kevin's eyes, I found myself saying something else entirely. "I, Rachel Ann Carter, take you, Kevin Dominic Reynolds, to be my husband. I promise to stand beside you, to trust in your protection, to be your partner in all things, for as long as this arrangement requires." That last line wasn't in the script. Kevin's eyes widened fractionally, the only sign I'd surprised him. The priest pronounced us married. Kevin lifted my veil, his hands gentle, and kissed me. It was supposed to be brief, chaste, appropriate for a church. But the moment his lips touched mine, something ignited. His hand came up to cradle my face, and the kiss deepened, became something raw and honest and completely inappropriate for our audience. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Kevin's eyes were storm dark, and I saw something in them I'd never seen before: hunger, possession, and what looked almost like fear. "Mine," he breathed, so quietly only I could hear. "Yours," I agreed. And just like that, the game changed. We weren't pretending anymore. The reception was exactly what I expected. Elegant, carefully choreographed, every detail designed to project power and stability. Kevin and I moved through it like actors in a play, accepting congratulations, dancing at appropriate moments, playing our roles flawlessly. But underneath the performance, tension simmered. Kevin kept me close, his hand always at my waist or the small of my back. Not possessive in the way that had bothered me with other men, but protective, claiming. Every touch reminded me, mine. And I found I didn't mind. Marcus arrived fashionably late, his smile confident as he approached to offer congratulations. "Cousin," he said smoothly. "Such a beautiful ceremony. Father would have been proud." Would he? I kept my voice neutral, aware of the crowd watching. I'm not sure fraud and betrayal are things he valued. Marcus's smile tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about. Then you'll have no objection to the presentation after dinner." Kevin's voice was pure ice. "A tribute to Rachel's father and his legacy. We've compiled quite the comprehensive look at the family business operations." Understanding dawned in Marcus's eyes, and fear quickly followed. That's not necessary. Oh, but it is. Kevin's hand tightened on my waist. Everyone here needs to understand exactly who they're dealing with, both in terms of the alliance I've formed with my wife and in terms of those who've worked against it. The dinner was excellent, though I barely tasted it. Every few minutes, Kevin would lean close, murmuring updates about security, about the family's reactions, about the evidence being prepared. Finally, after the toasts, Antonio stood. Before we move on to dancing, the happy couple has prepared something special. A presentation honoring Frank Carter and his decades of service to the families represented here tonight. The lights dimmed, a screen descended, and for the next 15 minutes, the assembled guests watched as every detail of Marcus's betrayal was methodically exposed. Financial records showing years of embezzlement, surveillance footage of his meetings with the Castellanos, testimony from his co-conspirators who'd been offered deals in exchange for turning on him. The fabricated evidence he'd planned to use against me, presented alongside proof of its false creation. By the time Antonio finished, Marcus's face was ashen. The room was deathly silent. "This," Kevin said, standing, "is what happens when someone threatens what's mine." Marcus Carter conspired not only against his cousin, but against the alliances her father spent decades building. He endangered stability for personal gain, and he did it by breaking the one rule we all follow: loyalty. He let that word hang for a moment. Then, "The evidence has been provided to representatives from every family here. Marcus's fate is no longer my decision. It's yours, collectively. But understand this. Anyone who moves against my wife, against the Carter interests she now controls, will face similar exposure and similar consequences." The message was unmistakable. Touch Rachel Reynolds, and you'll be destroyed. Marcus tried to speak, to defend himself, but no one was listening. The family's representatives were already huddling, making calls, coordinating responses. Within an hour, Marcus would either be dead or running for his life. Either way, he was finished. Kevin took my hand, leading me to the dance floor as music started. The message shift was deliberate. The business was handled. Now we could celebrate. In his arms, moving to the music, I finally asked, "What happens to him?" "The Irish families will handle it. He betrayed them too, leaked their operations to the Castellanos. They're not forgiving." "So he'll die?" "Probably." Kevin's expression was unreadable. "Does that bother you?" "It should have." Marcus was family, however treacherous, but all I felt was cold satisfaction. "No." "Good." His hand tightened on my waist. "Because this is who you need to be now. Someone willing to defend what's yours without hesitation. The families respect strength, Rachel. Mercy is seen as weakness. I'm learning. You're more than learning. You're adapting." He spun me, pulling me closer when we came back together. "You've impressed people tonight, showing up Marcus, standing beside me without flinching. They're calling you the Ice Queen already. Is that a compliment?" "In this world, absolutely." The song ended. Kevin led me off the dance floor, through the crowd, toward a quiet terrace. The moment we were alone, his demeanor changed. "We need to talk," he said, his voice tight. About this." He gestured between us. "About what happened at the altar, about how you changed the vows, about—" He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "About how this arrangement was supposed to be simple, and it's becoming anything but." My heart raced. "Kevin, I can't stop thinking about you," he interrupted, the words raw. "Since you moved into the estate, since I started protecting you. Hell, since 6 years ago, if I'm being honest. I've spent every day since that party trying to convince myself I did the right thing. that pushing you away protected you. But having you here, watching you navigate this world, seeing you become exactly the partner I need." He broke off, turning away. "This was supposed to be temporary. 1 year, then you walk away. That was the deal. And now," I moved closer, my hand finding his arm. "Now, I don't want you to leave." He turned to face me, and his eyes were fierce. "Now, I want to keep you. Make this real. Build something that isn't just strategy and alliances." "That's dangerous," I whispered, echoing his earlier words. "Everything about this is dangerous." His hands framed my face. "But I'm tired of pretending I don't care. Tired of acting like you're just a political necessity. You're not, Rachel. You haven't been since the moment you kissed me 6 years ago. You rejected me." "I protected you," he corrected, "the only way I knew how. By making you hate me. By pushing you so far away that this world couldn't touch you. And it worked. You left. You built something real. You were safe. But then you came back, and I got a second chance I don't deserve." My eyes burned with tears I refused to let fall. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying forget the 1-year timeline. Forget the divorce agreement. Forget pretending this is just business." His thumb stroked my cheek. "Stay with me, Rachel. Really stay. Be my wife in every way that matters." "You're asking me to give up my exit," I said slowly. "My freedom. My plan B." "I'm asking you to bet on us instead." His voice dropped. "I know I don't deserve it. I know I've been cruel, that I've hurt you, that I've made this harder than it needed to be. But I'm asking anyway. Stay with me. Choose this. Choose me." 6 years ago, I would have said yes immediately, would have thrown myself at this offer without question. But I wasn't 18 anymore. I'd learned how much words could hurt, how easily promises could break. "What if it doesn't work?" I asked. "What if we're only compatible because of the danger, the drama? What if when things settle down, we realize we don't actually like each other?" "Then we figure it out," Kevin said simply. "Together. As partners, as allies, as husband and wife. But we do it honestly, without exit strategies or predetermined endings." "That's asking a lot." "I know." His forehead rested against mine. "But I'm done lying to myself about what I want. And what I want is you. Not because it's strategic, not because it's necessary, because you're brilliant and brave and you see me, really see me, and you don't look away." My hands came up to grip his lapels. "I'm not easy to live with." "Good. I don't want easy. I want real. I'll challenge you constantly. I'm counting on it. And if you ever push me away again, if you ever reject me publicly to protect me, I will make your life hell." His smile was genuine, warm, the first real smile I'd ever seen from him. "Noted. Any other conditions?" "Separate offices. I'm running the Carter businesses my way, and you don't interfere unless it's absolutely necessary." "Agreed. Equal say in major decisions that affect both families." "Already assumed that. And..." I hesitated. "And you have to promise that if this doesn't work, if we try and it falls apart, you'll let me go without making it a war." Kevin's expression sobered. "I promise, though I have no intention of letting it fall apart." "Pretty confident, Reynolds. About you? Always." He kissed me then, deep and thorough, and nothing like the careful kiss at the altar. This kiss was promise and possession, and 6 years of denied desire finally given permission. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "So, that's a yes?" Kevin asked, his voice rough. "That's a yes," I confirmed. But if you make me regret this, you'll make my life hell. I remember. He grinned. I wouldn't have it any other way. Antonio appeared on the terrace, clearing his throat. Sorry to interrupt, but the families are asking for a statement about the arrangement moving forward. Tell them, Kevin said, not taking his eyes off me, that this arrangement just became permanent. Mrs. Reynolds isn't going anywhere. Understood. Antonio's smile suggested he'd expected exactly this outcome. Congratulations, both of you. After he left, Kevin took my hand, threading our fingers together. Ready to face them as a real married couple? Ready to face anything, I said. As long as you're beside me. Always, he promised, and from the fierce certainty in his eyes, I believed him. We returned to the reception together, and this time when Kevin's hand settled at my waist, it felt different. Not performance, not strategy, just truth. The families noticed the change immediately. Something in our body language, our expressions, the way we moved together now. The whispers started almost at once, but they weren't the cruel speculation I'd feared. They were surprised approval. Respect, even. Because in this world, genuine partnerships were rare. Strategic alliances were common. Political marriages expected. But actual love? Real connection between two people powerful enough to change the city's balance? That was something worth noting. The party continued late into the night. At some point, Kevin leaned close and murmured, "Want to escape? Thought you'd never ask." We slipped away from the crowd, making our way through the estate's halls to Kevin's bedroom. Our bedroom now, officially. The room I'd avoid thinking about, the place I'd assumed I'd never actually share with him. But that was before. Before the vows. Before the exposure of Marcus. Before Kevin's raw honesty on the terrace. Now, standing in his space, I felt anticipation instead of dread. "We don't have to," Kevin started. I kissed him, cutting off the careful qualifier. "I know, but I want to. No more pretending, remember?" His smile was slow and devastating. No more pretending. What followed was nothing like I'd imagined. It was tender and fierce, hesitant and confident. A discovery of each other without the layers of defense we'd maintained for so long. Afterward, lying in his arms with moonlight streaming through the windows, I felt something settle deep in my chest. Peace, maybe. Or recognition that I was exactly where I belonged. "Tell me something," Kevin murmured, his fingers tracing patterns on my shoulder. "That night 6 years ago, when you kissed me. What made you so sure?" "I don't know," I admitted. Maybe just the certainty that what I felt was too big to ignore. That if I didn't say something, I'd regret it forever. And now I know I was right. I tilted my head to look at him. We just needed 6 years and a strategic marriage to figure it out. He laughed, the sound genuine and unguarded. Most complicated courtship in history. Most honest one, though. I traced the line of his jaw. No pretense, no games. Just two people who are terrible at admitting what they want finally being honest. I can live with that. Kevin pulled me closer. Though I reserve the right to be terrible at admitting things occasionally. Old habits. As long as you're terrible at it with me, always with you, he promised, no one else. I fell asleep in his arms, truly safe for the first time in years, not because of security systems or bodyguards or strategic alliances, but because the man holding me had finally stopped protecting me from himself and chose to love me instead.